the Open University of Catalonia, School of Law and Political Science, and a researcher and its Internet Interdisciplinary Institute and e-learning center. He works on the impact of information and communication technology in development. He's going to explain us where do telecenters have to go, how do they have to develop. So please receive him with a warm applause. Ismael Peña.
Hola, buenos días. Gracias por la presentación internacional. Si me dejáis, voy a hablar en castellano. Creo que tenéis traducción los que no habláis castellano. Yo voy a empalmar un poco con la presentación anterior de intentar repensar el telecentro, intentar repensar para qué utilizamos las TIC, intentar repensar qué sentido tiene esto de dar acceso público a la tecnología desde espacios compartidos, desde espacios públicos, etcétera. Y os presento un mapa, o no... A ver, un segundo, que tengo un problema técnico aquí. ¿Me echáis la mano con el pasado?
Habla.
Ahora sí. Vale. Me tengo que dar la...
Okay, I guess I have to turn my back to change the slides. Here's a map of the Barcelona neighborhood called Raval. It is one of the poorest neighborhoods in Barcelona. It's very much like any poor neighborhood of any big cities. And the blue points are the internet access of this neighborhood. For 50,000 people, there's almost 60 internet centers like schools, free Wi-Fi, cyber cafes, LAN centers, telecenters, etc. And I didn't take into account bars and restaurants who also offer interest. The question that one may ask oneself is, why should the Raval have 3 telecenters or 1 library or 2 libraries around it? I'm not criticizing it, but I was just thinking about it. And this may be a bit of a Western example. Something that when the mobile broadband becomes accessible in terms of cost and availability, then this each point will be for each person who has a mobile telephone, intelligent telephone, and they will have a smartphone, and will wonder why all these telecenters when everybody has access to internet, and in this case is more than over 40 of these points are free access. Well, it seems like, and just think of your own background, but it seems that we have solved the last mile issues. It's about to be solved. If it's not solved in 3, 4, 5 years, it will be solved. And with WiMAX solution, Wi-Fi, 3G, 4G. I mean, we have more and more possibilities to have physical and mobile access to internet. So it's less and less of an obstacle. Every time we have more content, more services in these places on anywhere. It's located for our own language, for our own culture. So what's the issue? Well, maybe one issue is actually this digital know-how. In some cases, there's a great void. Most part is maintained by the industry. The availability, services, technology. Then there's the ITC sector is developed not just in developed countries, but in developing countries as well. And then there's the public sector, the state sector, which is resolving the technological issues, copyrights, risks, security, etc. And then in red is the part which is very immature. Why do we want these contents, these computers, these mobile telephones, these telecenters, when we already have physical access, but levels of digital know-how declared by citizens or in practice are still very low? Well, there's still Concerning the usage quality, many indicators tell us that the network is saturated, not because, but we don't know why we use it to study, to use emails, to download films, to watch films. Now we have a great role that intermediaries are resolving little by little, cyber cafes and LAN centers. Maybe they want to expand not just as a business, but as the kind of activities carried out. Each of us will not need any of these physical accesses anymore, and will focus on digital know-hows and digital talents. How? Well, we see more and more worldwide, and not just in Barcelona, but the rest of the world, we see telecenters and cyber cafes. The telecenter is something sustained by the state that doesn't look for any economic return, but that wants to have an impact on citizenship. And on the other side, the cyber cafe is the opposite. They want to be financially sustainable. They want to get income, and they don't have any explicit objective for in digital inclusion. But we see that the sustainability issues force telecenters to go down and to be more and more concerned with economic sustainability, because governments don't give so many subsidies, because maybe they are not so necessary anymore. And cyber cafes are becoming more and more agents or players for inclusion, even though it's not in their business plan. In rural areas, we see that these cyber cafes offer some free services. They give access to communities. So my question is whether we'll see telecenters and cyber cafes disappear because they will be useless, or will they become something economically sustainable? Maybe the telecenter may be more economically sustainable, and the cyber cafe may be every day more useful for the community. You can call it the way you want, but we see that telecenters are looking for sustainability. Before, our Brazilian colleague was telling us about entrepreneurship, and the cyber cafe is something more social than what was created for at the beginning. The telecenters we see in the academic literature that we are trying to fill this gap of digital illiteracy, not just for technological literacy. Being technologically literate means that we know how to use different software, etc. But then we need to know what the information means. We have to learn to look for it. We have to be critical with the information we find. And also, technological literacy is not just textual, but it's multimedia. We have to learn to work with sound and image, mixture of text, sound, image, animated image, moving image, or photography, and also media literacy. We have to know, for a company, it's very relevant to be on internet, and the company has to know how to be on internet. Just like for a person, how do I introduce myself? How do I introduce my company, my business? And therefore, not only do we have basic technological literacy, but also all these different kinds of technological literacies. And concerning innovation and rethinking telecenters, here are two parts of this cycle of the technology. First of all, we have to know the technology. Now, we have to adapt oneself to a new technology and leave old technology aside. And I think there's a great opportunity now in looking at new ways to look with technology for transformation. I think in politics it's clear, not just because people will be able to vote electronically, but also because we may have much decentralized citizenship actions that will not depend on trade unions or political parties. Same thing with companies. Until now, in the first part, two parts, we've seeing how we can train individuals to be more competitive in the market field, but in the market, but also how can this person become a freelance thanks to the ITCs? How can they interact with other freelance workers? And then the ITCs can not just improve technological literacy and improve the worker so that he becomes a better worker, but we can also change the whole organization of our community.
Es el ámbito de los telecentros.
This is something that in the world of telecenters is going to be more and more incorporated, and there are certain trends that are only starting but which are going to become stronger. First of all, I'm going to talk about the networks between telecenters, which is something which is maybe obvious for the people who are here, but not for everyone. And this doesn't mean that we meet once a year or once every 4 years here in Granada, but rather that there is a strong centralization of the networks of telecenters and that each telecenter uses this information to bring it to the local environment. You can generate contents, strategies, brands. You can generate also tools for the sensibilization. You can also have physical access to the community and the other way around. We have to maybe abandon the idea of a traditional telecenter and introduce ITCs in this telecenter. Before the telecenter, the community would congregate around the computer, but now what we have to do is to decentralize and bring the computers to the places where people are, to libraries, to meetings, to schools, to hospitals, etc. And on a map, it would be represented like this. We would have the telecenter in the middle, and on one hand, we have to bring out things that we are doing every day in telecenters towards a network that can manage this for everyone in common, and on the other hand, we have to introduce the telecenters into the companies, schools, etc., and maybe in the long run abandon telecenters in the traditional format that we know. And on contents, physically, we are going to disseminate, or we're going to diffuse the information, and we're also going to do this with the contents. It looks like something which is common sense, and there is a growing trend in this sense. I'm talking about the partnerships or associations, alliances, which bring people together to do things together, which can be done, for example, in ICTs for the education. There are more and more initiatives to bring computers into the classroom or into the homes. Why not work in governance for the creation of common contents? For example, the strategies of the ministries of education can be transmitted through the telecenters. And in the private sector, which we are not very related to, we could work with them to do e-commerce, to facilitate the payment of taxes, etc. We often think of telecenters as something which is used for the e-inclusion of poor people, but we don't realize that there are companies who are always also suffering from the exclusion, because there is a entrepreneurial tissue which cannot have access to the citizens. Why not introduce them also in this context, creating strategies of ITC strategies for them, and insisting on what I just said? Why not start working with the community? And I mean schools, education, universities, local governments, local associations, etc., bringing the content that we have in the physical space to another, or converting it to another means of communication. We have a session at 11:15 where we will talk about this in more detail. about this idea of redesigning the activity of telecenters, not only to serve the people who are excluded according to their income, but to work with learning labs, work centers, etc. This is the new ideas that are being developed now. We are abandoning the idea of a physical telecenter, bringing this physical part to the community centers, to the libraries that already exist in the community, giving also much more value to the virtual part, so that the telecenter is not the place where people go, but it is rather a decentralized place. The telecenter goes to where people are. It goes to companies. It goes to schools, to incorporate internet into the schools. We have to abandon the idea of telecenters as a physical place, as I said, and conceive it now as a place of knowledge, which means that we don't have to be slaves of this physical place. And that, of course, can only work if everyone really has physical access to the internet. If you have any questions, we can talk to each other later in the corridors. Thank you very much for your attention.